Welcome back to the AI Breakdown Brief, all the AI headline news you need in 5-ish minutes or less. Now today, obviously the biggest news is that Apple is apparently working on an LLM system and an Apple GPT, ChatGPT type competitor. But that is the subject of the main AI breakdown, and so where we are starting today is with a new report that's all about generational attitudes towards AI that has some really interesting things to say about what Gen Z and Millennials think about the future of entertainment. Now, this report was put together by Dan Frommer. Dan is the founder and editor-in-chief of The New Consumer, and he just put together a massive report on what he calls the three things that everybody's talking about right now: AI, Ozempic, and the economy. So a few key trends. First of all, confirming what we already know, AI is absolutely everywhere. The number of quarterly earnings calls that mention AI has tripled. The percentage of articles that mention AI has also tripled or more. 90% of US consumers 15 and up have heard of AI, and already half of millennials and Gen Z say that they are, quote, very familiar with AI. That number is 30% for Gen X and only 10% for boomers. Now, in terms of specific tool awareness, ChatGPT is in the lead, followed by Bard and Bing, followed by Firefly, DALL-E, GitHub Copilot, Jasper, Stable Diffusion, and Midjourney. Unsurprisingly, a lot of people are worried about how AI might impact their jobs. 28% said that they are worried that AI will replace them within 5 years. What's more, the people who are the most familiar with AI are the most worried about getting AI'd. People who make more say that they are already using AI tools at work. For example, 57% of people who make between $100,000 and $150,000, 61% of people who make between $150,000 and $200,000, and 63% of people who make over $200,000 say they're already using AI tools at work. Some of the things that I found most interesting were around attitudes towards art and entertainment and creativity. Dan asked the question of whether different generational cohorts considered AI art to be art. Among boomers, 59% said no, while only 17% said yes, whereas millennials and Gen Z were much more likely to see AI art as art. 53% of millennials said that yes, AI art was art versus 33% who didn't, and 45% of Gen Z said it was art versus 39% who didn't. Now, these two are perhaps the most interesting numbers. When asked, will AI become the dominant form of entertainment, 41% of Gen Z and millennial consumers at least somewhat agreed that 20 years from now, most movies, art, music, and books will be created by AI. What's more, 39% of those same generations at least somewhat agree that 20 years from now, the best movies, art, music, and books will be created by AI. I find this super interesting because on the one hand, it's not surprising to me that people would assume, even if cynically, that AI is going to take over the entertainment sphere. The fact that 2/5 of people think that the best stuff will be created by AI shows, I think, a serious strain of optimism. Now, finally, this one is really important. So much of our discussion is about AI tools as productivity enhancing or worker replacing. But Dan had the insight to ask people whether they'd actually use these tools for fun. When asked, have you used AI tools for fun or entertainment? 10% of boomers said yes, 34% of Gen X said yes, but 61% of millennials and 64% of Gen Z said that yes, they had. Investor Winnie Lau tweeted about this saying, build things that are fun and magical first. Love Dan Frommer's Consumer Trends report today that highlights exactly this. Most Gen Z and millennial consumers say they've used AI tools for fun. Seeing it put here really reinforces how much our conversation has not focused on that aspect of it. Lastly, there does appear to be a real generational separation when it comes to how worried versus how excited AI makes people feel. When asked that question, by far the most dominant answer for Gen X and boomers was that AI made them feel worried. 53% responded worried, 28% responded scared, 21% responded stressful, and only 23% and 17% respectively responded hopeful or excited. When it came to Gen Z and millennials, 34% said they were excited, 34% said it made them feel hopeful, 28% said it made them feel happy, 22% said it made them feel amused, whereas 31% and 18% respectively said that it made them feel worried or scared. So a really interesting study. Good on Dan for producing something so fascinating. Now, speaking of the use of AI in entertainment, a Reuters report today went deep into the way that South Korea's biggest record label is using AI to make K-pop and other artists on their label more accessible to a global audience. Basically, what this label is doing is that they're recording artists singing in multiple languages, but then mixing that with native speakers of those languages to make it feel more natural. They're effectively breaking down speech into its different constituent parts and reconstructing a combination of the singers as well as the native speakers to produce something that allows them to put out songs in multiple languages at the same time. For example, in May, the company put out a track from singer Minnat in 6 languages simultaneously: Korean, English, Spanish, Chinese, Japanese, and Vietnamese. Again, a super interesting look at how AI might break down linguistic barriers when it comes to global entertainment. Now, one of the flip sides, of course, of this positivity surrounding AI for entertainment and art is the question of whether it's infringing upon the rights of artists that models were trained upon. Well, in that, a San Francisco judge has kind of struck a blow. U.S. District Judge William Orrick said in a hearing yesterday that he was actually inclined to dismiss most of a lawsuit that had been brought by a group of artists against generative AI companies, including Stability AI and Midjourney, basically saying that they hadn't done a good job actually providing facts around the alleged copyright infringement. Orrick said that they should be able to provide a lot more given that they had access to Stability's relevant source code, and said as part of his decision, quote, "I don't think the claim regarding output images is plausible at the moment because there's no substantial similarity between images created by the artist and the AI systems." As Reuters puts it, the hearing provided a first glimpse of how judges may treat a wave of lawsuits that accuse companies of misusing vast swaths of material to train their AI systems. Speaking of things done by humans today that might be done by not humans in the future, the New York Times has reported about a new Google tool internally known as Genesis, which is effectively an AI journalist. Apparently, Genesis has been demoed for executives at the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Wall Street Journal, and was positioned by Google as an assistant for journalists rather than a replacement. Still, it sounds like the executives weren't convinced. According to the New York Times, quote, "Some executives who saw Google's pitch described it as unsettling. 2 people said it seemed to take for granted the effort that went into producing accurate and artful news stories." Now, Google was quick to say that this was not about replacing journalists. A spokesperson said, quite simply, these tools are not intended to and cannot replace the essential role journalists have in reporting, creating, and fact-checking their articles. Instead, the idea, she says, is to provide options for headlines, to change writing styles, and things like that. Finally today, given that we saw about 40% of millennials and Gen Z think that AI might write the best entertainment in the future, we'll end with some words from James Cameron, who very much doubts that AI can write a good script. Interviewed by CTV News, the Avatar and Titanic director said, "I just don't personally believe that a disembodied mind that's just regurgitating what other embodied minds have said about the life that they've had, about love, about lying, about fear, about mortality, and just put it all together into a word salad and then regurgitate it. I don't believe that's ever going to have something that's going to move an audience. You have to be a human to write that. I don't know anyone that's even thinking about having AI write a screenplay." Let's wait 20 years, he said, and if AI wins an Oscar for Best Screenplay, I think we've got to take them seriously. Anyways, guys, that is going to do it for today's AI Breakdown Brief. The interesting discussions about the cultural implications of AI just continue to grow. Now, for you guys, if you are enjoying the AI Breakdown, please, if you are watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. A huge percentage of you who watch these videos actually aren't subscribed yet, and I want to make sure you are up to date with the most relevant news. For those of you who are subscribed or who are listening on the podcast, I really appreciate you spending some time with us each day. And of course, I'll be back soon with the main AI Breakdown.